Few people are aware of the personal trauma that veteran journalist Bret Baier has endured for almost 20 years. Even though millions of Americans tune in every evening to watch him deliver the most significant news of the day from behind the Fox News anchor desk. A baby boy was born with a heart the size of a walnut pumping blood in the incorrect direction. Before he was a teenager, he had 5 open-heart surgery. The whole family was pinned upside down in a freezing ditch after an automobile accident in Montana. The unexpected death of Bret's father, who influenced everything about him, and perhaps most agonizing of all, his meticulously cultivated reputation as one of television's most impartial reporters, would be destroyed by leaked text conversations. This is the tale of a man who dedicated his professional life to presenting America with harsh realities, only to encounter personal realities for which no journalism school could have adequately prepared him. Bret Baier should have had nothing but success in 2007. He had recently been appointed as Fox News' White House reporter, a distinguished role covering the Bush administration. His career path led directly upward. However, Bret had labored for years to reach his professional heights. In a hospital birthing room, his personal life was about to fall apart. That year, Amy Baier gave birth to their first son, whom they named Paul. The actual delivery proceeded without incident. It appeared to be another healthy baby coming into the world with no problems or warning indications. However, one of the nurses detected something concerning soon after the baby was born. The baby's hue wasn't quite right, and he seemed pallid. What happened next was a real-time nightmare for every parent. A catastrophic diagnosis was made after medical testing. Paul has 5 congenital cardiac abnormalities from birth. His walnut-sized heart was pumping blood in the wrong direction throughout his body. Due to the severity of the problems, physicians had to give news that no parent wants to hear. In a matter of days, their newborn boy would require open-heart surgery. There was a very real chance that Paul may not live to see his parents again. Nothing can prepare you for seeing your newborn boy carried into an operation room, even if Bret and Amy were raised as devout Catholics. During those terrible initial days, the couple relied heavily on prayer. In a later account of his thoughts at this period, Bret expressed his conviction that a loving God had a greater purpose for Paul and their family. However, in those early days, dread and faith coexisted. As an infant, Paul had his first open-heart surgery. Although the treatment went well, it was just the start of a medical adventure that would shape the Baier family's future for years to come. Paul would have 4 more open-heart procedures in the ensuing years. 10 angioplasties, medical procedures intended to maintain the function of his weakened circulatory system, were performed in between the major surgeries. There were potentially fatal hazards associated with each procedure. Every recuperation phase had its own difficulties. To cope with the frequent hospital stays, the purchasers created coping strategies. They came up with a family motto that they would recite when things became tough. Paul's homecoming is one day closer. It served as a fulcrum and a gauge of their advancement. Even though home seemed far away and the road ahead seemed endless, they could see the end of the tunnel, no matter how far away it was. After 7 years of dealing with Paul's cardiac ailment, Bret decided to tell their experience to the world in 2014. A journey of faith, hope, courage, and love is the subtitle of his autobiography, Special Heart. The book provided readers with an unvarnished glimpse into the struggles faced by families dealing with congenital heart disease, by detailing every horrific moment of Paul's medical odyssey. In his writing, Bret was open about the toll Paul's illness took on his marriage to Amy, the anxieties that kept him up at night, and the faith that got them through their darkest hours. The book fulfilled two functions. All funds went toward research into congenital heart disease, but it also made other families dealing with similar diagnoses feel less alone. The purchasers learned that congenital heart problems affect around 1% of all births in the U.S., but nothing was known about this. Bret changed that by using his position. An unexpected person provided Bret with vital emotional assistance during this time. The renowned Fox News anchor Brit Hume, whom Bret had taken over on Special Report, had gone through a personal tragedy when his adult son committed suicide. Hume had a deeper understanding of fear and grief than most of his peers. He provided Bret with crucial insight throughout the early stages of Paul's health issue. Things will improve. You have to trust in God and the doctors and put it in God's hands, Hume advised him. As Paul matured, the Baiers put a lot of effort into keeping things normal. When Daniel, their second son, came along in 2010, they realized how important it was to make sure both boys had the same amount of love and support. Although the brothers grew close, there was always a chance that Daniel might feel ignored because of all the care given to his older brother's health, and Paul was resolved to lead as normal a life as he could in spite of everything. However, the family struggles were far from finished. They still had one of their most terrifying times ahead of them. The Baier family's 2019 trip to Montana was designed to be just what they needed: a chance to get on the slopes, enjoy the mountain air, and temporarily forget about hospital stays and cardiac monitoring. Paul had been in generally good health. The family believed they could finally unwind. The actual ski vacation was a huge success. The slopes were fun for the guys. Amy and Bret were able to unwind for a while. The family packed into their car for the drive to the airport as their holiday came to an end. They were already organizing their next family outing as they made their way home with fond recollections. On that Montana road, nobody could have imagined what would come next. The car struck a patch of ice. Bret became uncontrollable. They hit a truck before anyone had a chance to comprehend what was occurring. Their SUV flew off the road due to the impact. The car entirely overturned and landed in a ditch on the side of the road. There was only the sound of metal cracking and silence for a moment. Then it dawned on them that none of them had died. After seeing the collision, a passing driver stopped to assist. Together with Bret and Amy, the Good Samaritan managed to free all 4 family members from the damaged car. When emergency personnel came, they hurried everyone to the closest hospital for assessment. The irony of the circumstance was not missed on a family already familiar with hospital rooms and medical procedures. They had traveled to Montana to avoid health issues, only to find themselves back in a hospital. The evaluation of the damage showed incredible luck. Bret sustained a brain injury. A family member's chin needed 14 stitches. Another would require dental care for a jostled tooth. The final injury on the list was a sprained ankle. Thankfully, nobody suffered any potentially fatal injuries. Bret would subsequently characterize them as banged up but alive. Bret praised the first responders and the Good Samaritan who had stopped to help in a public statement. However, it was his social media reflection that made clear how profoundly the accident affected him. After years of medical crises and near misses, he posted a statement that seemed to encapsulate all the lessons the Baier family had learned. Never take anything for granted. Family is everything, and every day is a blessing, he added. The accident was just another reminder of life's fragility, which the Baiers already knew better than most, but they didn't have time to process the trauma. A few months later, in 2020, Bret's phone would ring with news that would bring a different kind of pain. It's always good to remind yourself of that before something does it for you. The cancer had spread rapidly, and within months of the diagnosis, Bret learned that his father's time was running out. He traveled to be with his father and the whole family present at his funeral, and he later expressed gratitude that his father's suffering was brief and that everyone who loved him had the opportunity to say goodbye. The loss was more devastating than Bret had expected. In an interview with MarketWatch just 3 years prior, Bret talked about his relationship with his father and how his father had greatly influenced his work ethic. From the landscaping business he had operated as a teenager to the way he approached his work as a news anchor. When Bret announced his father's death, the online community poured in. Co-workers, viewers, and fellow journalists flooded his social media with messages of love and support. But no amount of support could make up for the loss of the man who had been a key part of Bret's identity. Bret learned his lessons about hard work, integrity, and dedication from watching his father live those values every day. The aftermath of the 2020 presidential election caused chaos in American politics and media as Donald Trump refused to concede defeat to Joe Biden, claiming widespread election fraud. Bret had no idea that his professional world was about to blow up in a scandal that would threaten everything he'd built while he grieved for his father and continued to manage Paul's ongoing health needs. Dominion Voting Systems, a manufacturer of electronic voting equipment used nationwide, was the target of increasingly lurid fraud allegations in the weeks after the election, and many Republicans echoed these claims, with some GOP politicians claiming the election had been stolen through tampered voting machines and tainted vote counts. Despite the lack of evidence, conservative media personalities asserted that Dominion's machines had been programmed to shift votes from Trump to Biden. The claims quickly gained traction in right-wing media circles, and Bret's employer, Fox News, became one of the loudest propagators of them. Several Fox News personalities frequently promoted unsupported claims regarding Dominion's equipment. The network's largely pro-Trump audience enthusiastically embraced the narratives that night after night's hosts and anchors suggested the company had contributed to stealing the election from Trump. But Dominion was not going to let the charges go unanswered, and the company filed a massive defamation lawsuit against Fox News, seeking $1. The lawsuit sparked lengthy discovery proceedings. Bret was questioned and investigated as part of the case, and text messages between Fox News personalities were subpoenaed. Dominion accused the network of purposefully damaging its reputation with false claims that its executives knew weren't true. The company was awarded $6 billion in damages. An examination of internal communications revealed a troubling picture of the network's operations during the election. For Bret, the tragedy of the Dominion situation extended beyond the lawsuit itself. As Fox News shifted further to the right following Trump's defeat, further isolating him within his own organization, Bret made a decision that showed where his priorities lay. He proposed a special episode that would methodically investigate and refute the allegations of election fraud that were circulating through conservative media. He had built his career on measured, fact-based reporting, and he had gained respect from people of all political persuasions for his fairness. However, he now watched as his network abandoned those ideals in favor of keeping its audience satisfied. Bret submitted the proposal and is still awaiting a response. The special would demonstrate Fox News' ability to balance serving its audience with serving the truth, demonstrating the network's ability to take voter concerns seriously while still putting facts ahead of emotions. Fox News fought to keep internal communications private during the Dominion case, but eventually some of those private messages leaked to the press. The Daily Beast obtained text messages between Bret and Tucker Carlson, one of the network's biggest stars. The special was never made, and his pitch was never even answered. What those texts showed would forever alter the way many people saw Bret Baier. Bret and Tucker were discussing Fox News' decision to call election results, which was being heavily criticized by Trump supporters, upset that Biden was winning states. According to the texts, Bret acknowledged that the network's core audience wasn't pleased with Biden's performance and needed reassurance. The texts proved prophetic, as Fox News was the last major network to officially call the election for Joe Biden, holding out long after other news organizations had done so. Bret also claimed that he personally pressed network decision-makers to slow down their election calls, saying in one message that he had pressed them to slow things down and predicted they would slow walk, calling Nevada for Biden. Bret's reputation as an impartial journalist had shielded him from the worst of the criticism aimed at Fox News, but the texts dealt a devastating blow to that carefully cultivated image. Prior to the text's leak, Bret had mostly avoided speculation about his motivations during the 2020 election. The man who built his career on objectivity seemed to have compromised his own standards to appease an angry audience, and there was documentary evidence that suggested Bret had allowed political considerations to influence his judgment of the news. Few accusations cut deeper for journalists than the suggestion that you have allowed politics to override facts. That's exactly what the leaked texts indicated. Fox News ultimately reached a $787.5 million settlement in the Dominion lawsuit, one of the biggest defamation settlements in American media history. The network acknowledged in a statement that some of the allegations made about Dominion were untrue, but the harm to Bret's reputation and Fox News's credibility could not be repaired by a settlement check. The question of what Bret had been willing to give up for partisan politics would follow him. But even as his professional world fell apart, his personal life still required all of his remaining strength. The Baiers never lost sight of what really mattered, despite the professional turmoil surrounding the Dominion scandal and the leaked texts. Paul's fight with his heart condition persisted, and the family's determination to support others going through similar hardships kept them going. Despite the controversy surrounding Bret's career, the Baiers had established themselves as prominent voices in the pediatric cardiology community and at the Children's National Hospital Foundation in Washington, D.C., where Paul had received the majority of his treatment. Amy joined the foundation's board and actively participated in determining the organization's priorities. Bret used his public platform to raise awareness and funds, helping to generate over $1 million for the hospital through various charity events and fundraising initiatives. The couple's biggest gift to date was a $1 million donation to Children's National Hospital in 2023, specifically to create the Baier Family Congenital Heart Disease Research Program, which aims to develop treatment options for the condition that affects almost 1% of all births in America. In the meantime, Paul continued to defy expectations, joining his high school's varsity golf team and spending hours on the course honing his swing despite his ongoing medical challenges. For the Baiers, it was a way to turn their family's suffering into a purpose, ensuring that future families might experience better outcomes than they had. In addition, he played varsity tennis, pushing his body in ways that might have seemed unattainable given his medical background. The Baiers made a concerted effort to make sure that Paul and his younger brother Daniel felt equally loved and supported, being careful not to let Paul's medical needs take precedence over Daniel's own adolescent journey. Then, in May 2024, medical professionals discovered a potentially fatal aneurysm close to Paul's heart during a routine chest X-ray, the same type Paul had had dozens of times before, which made everyone realize how vulnerable Paul's condition still was. The odds of finding an asymptomatic aneurysm during a routine screening were almost miraculous. Bret called the discovery divine intervention, and it's hard to argue with his interpretation. The 16-year-old had shown no symptoms at all, and if the aneurysm had gone unnoticed, it could have ruptured at any time, most likely killing him. 5 days after Paul's fifth open-heart surgery to repair the aneurysm, which was as complicated and dangerous as any he had ever had, he was released to continue his recuperation at home. The Baiers remained steadfast in their commitment to being transparent about their experiences. Bret utilized his job at Fox News to interview medical experts on congenital heart disease, informing viewers about warning signals and the significance of early screening. They realized that sharing their story might make other families dealing with a similar illness feel less alone. The message the Baiers consistently conveyed to other families going through similar crises was one of hope and perspective. No matter how difficult things may seem right now, there's always reason to believe that things will get better. He featured other families dealing with a CHD diagnosis, providing them with a platform to share their own stories of survival and struggle. Today, Bret Baier continues to anchor special reports every evening for millions of Fox News viewers, but he has undergone a significant transformation from the aspirational young journalist who joined the network back in 1998. Trust in the medical professionals. Lean on your faith if you have it. Hold tight to your family. Take things one day at a time, because tomorrow isn't promised, but it's also not predetermined. Paul, now nearing adulthood, needs continuous cardiac care for the rest of his life, and his doctors are unable to predict exactly what the future holds. There will probably be more procedures, possibly more surgeries. The years of medical crises, personal losses, and professional controversies have changed his perspective on what matters. Paul has survived to 16 years old, thrived despite his condition, and built a life filled with sports, friends, and normal teenage experiences more than the Baiers dared hope for during those terrifying first days in the hospital. The aneurysm scare of 2024 demonstrated that danger still lurks in ways that are not always predictable. Even though the professional setbacks were painful and embarrassing, they were nothing compared to the numerous times over the years that Bret almost lost his son. The leaked texts hurt his reputation, but his son was still alive. Today, Bret frequently talks about the value of gratitude and the importance of being thankful for everything in every moment of every day. His family survived a car accident that could have killed them all, but the Dominion scandal damaged Fox News. Bret discovered that perspective alters how you interpret both success and tragedy. The car accident in Montana that turned their car upside down was another harsh reminder of how quickly things can change. You can't control when ice forms on a road, when a baby is born with heart defects, when text messages leak, or when your father is diagnosed with cancer. One minute you're driving to an airport, thinking about your normal life, and the next you're hanging upside down in a ditch, wondering if everyone is okay. But you can choose how you react. You can choose thankfulness over resentment. You can choose purpose over hopelessness. After decades of covering public figures' ascents and declines, political victories and defeats, and other people's tragedies and victories, Bret Baier has found that his best stories aren't those he tells from the anchor desk. It's the one he lives every day when the cameras stop and he returns home to a family that has endured more than most people can comprehend. It's evident in the bond between two brothers who have come to understand that a childhood isn't defined by medical difficulties. It's in the sound of Paul's heartbeat, which continues to beat strong even after 5 open-heart surgeries. Though the professional controversies will fade, the Dominion scandal will become a footnote in cable news history. The leaked texts will be forgotten as new controversies emerge, and Paul's heart will continue to beat. It's present in every thankful breath the family takes, knowing how close they've come to losing everything multiple times. And the Baier family will continue to choose thankfulness over dread, purpose over paralysis, and the conviction that, if you don't give up hope, even the most difficult journeys may result in something worthwhile.